Hey everyone, welcome to another brand new episode of The Deep Cut here on the Outlaw Nation Network. I'm excited today to welcome to the show one of the writers of this new film that is out on VOD. Now, depending on where we drop this interview, it's either out now or it's coming out on June 12th for you to enjoy. It's called The King of Staten Island. It stars Pete Davidson. It's directed by Judd Apatow. And both of those men wrote on this script, and so did this guy right here. You know him as a writer all over the place. You knew him as Brick Stone when he was going after the Westboro Baptist people. But also he's an accomplished writer and apparently a roast master, which already scares me to pieces. But we're going to spend an hour with this gentleman right here, Dave Sirus. How are you? Did I say the last name right?
Sirus.
All right, Dave Sirus. How are you, Dave?
Good. How are you? Thank you
good,
for
good.
all that.
Well, listen, man, we're on the precipice of this movie coming out. And this is something, I don't know if you've written a feature-length script before. I know you're a sketch writer and done a number of work for a number of shows. What's the feeling like for you in this moment as this is about to drop? And it's getting pretty good reviews for the most part. Like, what's your feeling as this is about to drop now?
Well, yeah, this is the first movie I've written that got made. I've written a few scripts before, but nothing that was produced. The feeling, honestly, is it just I sort of just feel dumb talking about a movie right now. You know what I mean?
Oh, like, yeah, well, of course.
Honestly, it's the idea that, like, I never wanted it to feel like I was trying, like, I have no interest in taking focus away from what's important, honestly.
Right.
And it's like,
right.
we never thought that this movie would ever come out at a time that was, so much more focused on something more important.
Sure.
The George Floyd protests, people, outside about, fighting racism and police violence. And it just, you couldn't have a more frivolous thing to be talking about aside from that than just some movie. So it is a very weird feeling. Like, I do have a certain amount of, like, weirdness about, like, I don't want anyone to think that I'm actually arguing you should divide your focus away from what's important.
Right.
If people like the movie, that's great. That's very nice. But yeah, like, I'm certainly not freaking out with excitement. Like, that's the biggest thing going on right now, or that's what people should be thinking about.
Would you be normally? I mean, you're a very, for those of you who may not know this, Dave's a very political guy in terms of knowledge about what's going on in the world of politics. It seeps into all of his humor when he's doing the Westboro stuff. He's so brilliant. The Triumph, the Unsolved Comic Dog stuff you write for Robert Smigel now, some of the SNL stuff. So you've worked with Pete Davidson, obviously, for a number of years and have written probably for some of his stuff that he does on those weekend update moments. But, so this is, I mean, you don't strike me as the guy who would normally be bouncing off the walls, worried about the film, even if Black Lives Matter wasn't happening, even if these protests weren't going down. You seem a pretty even keel guy in that way.
Well, I mean, there was a time when this was going to have a regular release where I would be, the thing about that is, before COVID happened and everything changed. Yeah. The thing I was looking forward, Pete is the same. We were really looking forward to just seeing all these people we worked with and getting to enjoy, all the work we put in and, hanging out with them and being able to just get out there. And it was a bigger deal for me than anyone else because all the other people involved with the movie know what that's like.
Right.
And I don't really. So, I lost out on that. But then completely separately, the protests have, that's become, it ended up making the time that our movie happened to be coming out like a very, very important, a very serious time. Yeah. So like, I think if none of that was happening, I wouldn't be like freaking out, but I would certainly be more focused on the movie. That would be all I was thinking about. That would probably be all I was talking about in a different world.
Yeah. Well, and then we got to throw in COVID as well, obviously, and the news coming down in California. I'm not sure where you're based at, Dave, but the news coming out of California is that we're going to be opening theaters on Friday. Some theaters are going to be opening on Friday, which me personally, I'm also pretty politically aware of things that the channel has that bent to it at times. And I'm not happy with this decision, although it will be nice that people will be able to go out maybe someplace and see a movie and maybe enjoy your movie in the theater. It is still a bit of a weird time for all this stuff to be happening. Then again, we do need distractions sometimes from all the seriousness and all the heaviness and the weight that's happening in the world. There's nothing wrong with taking a little bit of a break and watching a comedy, and a comedy that has some very serious issues within it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's nothing wrong with people enjoying, people have a right to relax, and, hopefully that, gives people, some time to, have fun and with all the other things that they have to do, the more important things.
Right.
Theaters opening right now does seem weird to me. It does
Right.
seem like, especially California, which hasn't really gone down.
Right.
California very specifically has not declined in their daily cases. So I don't really know what the justification is to full-scale open movie theaters, because movie theaters are basically, they're the single, most glaring example of something that we have to treat differently right now, because it's an enclosed space. People's mouths are open. They're laughing. They're eating. It's very odd to me that you could even safely operate something like that for, once again, something like a movie. It's not the most important thing in the world. It's my industry. I want desperately for it to continue and for the economy to not lose movies, but it's still just a movie. And, I would never ask someone to, risk their life to see my movie.
Right. And you don't have to. You can order it on VOD and watch it in the comfort of your home and laugh along or cry in certain moments if you feel the need to. This is a very interesting film. It's a 2 hour and 20-minute comedy, which is rarely seen nowadays. But Judd likes to push those boundaries with his comedies. Tell me, what was your feeling when you heard how long it was going to be? Did you write for a longer time? Runtime for this movie, or were you kind of pushed along by Judd to add more scenes to kind of flesh out the story more as you and Pete were writing the script?
The movie changed constantly. The script was constantly evolving throughout the whole time we were filming. So there was never a clear understanding of how long it exactly would be. And we were just doing all the scenes we felt were necessary. Yeah. And it's not really 220. It's actually a little bit, especially when you consider the credits length, it's actually not that much longer than 2 hours.
Fair enough.
But the first version I saw was a 2.5 hour version. Yeah. Which you screen just to figure out which parts we should cut. Right. I was happier with the later version. I thought the cuts were good. I thought we learned something from the test audiences. Mm-hmm. And I think we went into it. We knew that, Judd tends to make movies that are slightly longer than the average comedy, but that's how he makes movies. And the thing about the length is that it's always a go-to thing where people complain about length, but you have no idea what the movie would be like without it. You have no idea if the movie works. Right. Any of those scenes taken out, and it just could simply be that that's the way, this story had to be told. Right. And also, long movies are not the end of the world. They still cost the same. Mm-hmm. And especially people watching it at home, I think there's a little bit more of a relaxation there. Because I can think of movies that were very long that I did not want to be at all shorter. Like Endgame is 3 hours and 1 minute, and I was shocked by people who thought it was too long. I honestly couldn't believe people who saw that movie thought that dragged. It didn't. Yeah, there are movies that are too long, but I mean, no, I think that people binge whole seasons of things now. It's a little bit different.
And I want to make it clear. I mean, I'm not complaining about it. It's just that it's something that seems to be a hallmark of the Apatow comedy. You're coming in to actually spend time with these characters. You're not coming in for a breezy 90-minute in and out. This is what he does with his comedy now. It's weaving in these actually really human stories and what they're experiencing, these life moments, these life journeys that they're on. And this is just a window into Pete Davidson's character for this time in his life. We catch him right at this time when he's 24 years old. He's self-admitted bit of a loser or burnout or dumb or whatever. And because it's self-deprecation, he's actually not any of those things. He's trying to move on from the loss of his father. And of course, this kind of mirrors what happened with Pete Davidson's life, in the fact that he is the son of a firefighter who passed away in 9/11. You guys didn't put that in to the script.
No.
I don't think that's too much of a spoiler to reveal. That's not in the script. Was that a conscious decision because you didn't want to tackle that monolith that is the 9/11 tragedy?
Yeah, we didn't want this to be. There were certain elements of Pete's life we did not want to include in this because, for one reason or another, it could distract or it could change the tone of the movie. And if we had made this about 9/11, for one thing, we didn't want to use 9/11. We didn't want to disrespect it by, selling a movie around it, for one thing. And because there's also an important element of, if you talk about someone who lost their father at 9/11, and then you just change it to, what if it was just a regular fire?
Yeah.
There's an interesting thing that comes about there, which is you examine that, like, why do we think of it so much differently when it's a famous tragedy, when to the person it happened to, that doesn't really make a difference to them and how they process it, or does it? And I think that's part of the questions we were even asking, just like we didn't want Pete to be a comedian in the movie. Yeah. We wanted, we felt it was important that there were certain things you distill down. And I think it wasn't like something we consciously discussed a lot. We just kind of said, like, let's not make it, that tragedy. Let's make our own story about loss. And not have to bring in the specter and the tonal, kind of change that would come if we were like, this is a movie about the victims of this tragedy.
Right. I like that approach, to be honest with you, removing it so you make it a singular thing, and you make a great point. Either way, your father or your mother still didn't come home that day, whether it was a house fire or a 9/11 fire. Or the tragedy that happened there. Either way, your parent didn't come home. You still have to grapple with that loss. It checks a couple of boxes for me, this film. I found myself very moved by it because I lost my father in 2008 unexpectedly from cancer. It came on really quick and it was done. And then I have a sister who was a firefighter, who is married to a firefighter now. So there was a lot of respect, I thought, that the film really delivered to the people who work in those in those jobs, and also some ball busting, rightfully deserved, for people who work in those jobs. I like that nothing was treated too seriously that it couldn't be made fun of in a way. But then in the end, and I don't want to give away too many things, but in the end, I like the way it was treated overall, the way that it was approached. Was this very important to you and Pete as you were grappling with this? Obviously, him being the son of a deceased firefighter.
Yeah, I mean, in some levels, there's parts of it that, we're not just glorifying firemen in like a childish way. We're treating them like real people. So you want to be very careful, because you have to, at the very least, you have to show people that this is coming from a place of respect, even as some characters may have to learn something, because that's part of what a story is. Right. But it was very important that this showed the respect for people who are responders, people who, people who have sacrificed themselves just to help people. So it was a really important thing for us to show reverence to, because when you're making a comedy, it's very difficult because we're not just we're talking about the respect for firemen and nurses also. Very much a lot of Pete's real mother, as well as the character, is a nurse, and she's someone who we see is her life has been about sacrifice. Her life has been about serving others in many ways. So there's a lot of that we really just wanted to make sure we were respecting, because when you write, a lot of jokes about anything, it's dangerous. And so we couldn't make a movie that was just this, slapstick joke engine. As many jokes as Pete and I would instinctually just throw at any script, there had to be a balance. There had to be a way that this is stayed grounded. And we can't just make Anchorman, my favorite movie. Which is what I do want to write. But we had to do something that was more grounded in reality. Even though like that kind of movie is what I consider the best, comedy ever, basically.
Wow, Anchorman, that's a strong statement. Okay, fair enough. I respect that.
What else would it be?
Well, I think there's a lot of people would throw in some. I mean, Coming to America is my number one. It still holds up for me. Some people would go all the way back to Some Like It Hot. People love that comedy as well. But I respect
Good
Anchorman.
movie.
Trust me.
Good movies.
My girlfriend is more of a Ricky Bobby fan. She's more of a Talladega Nights. She finds more love for that. But Anchorman is in my top 10, no doubt, for sure. Looking at this situation here, what was different? You've worked with Pete for quite some time. I think he was 18 when you first started writing with him. I think I have that right. So what was the process like here? And obviously we don't, it's very well known Pete's struggles and and a lot of people struggle with the things that Pete struggles with in our world. What was it like collaborating with him, getting this close to his pain, getting this close to his own personal journey as you guys wrote this film?
Well, Pete and I at this point had written several things together.
Mm-hmm.
We'd written multiple movies together. We co-write the majority of his update features on Weekend Update. Having worked at SNL, having just written so many things together that there was nothing new for us, and it's not like the things he goes through were particularly new either. Mm-hmm. But this was different because this was about really writing a story that was about deep in what's going on with his psyche. That's what Judd wanted, because we'd written multiple other scripts where Pete was a character, but it was never like this. It was never maybe things based on certain things in his life, but never where we're saying, no, we're going to really wrench the deepest emotions out of this story. And because we felt like to tell this story, it deserves it. You have to really, really take it seriously and really look at and that was where it started with Judd and us just talking about Pete's life and the weirdness of growing up as a famous 9/11 victim's kid. You know, to see like video of him at 8 years old on his football team being stood up in front of the team while a coach improvises a speech, to see him shaking hands with George Bush at 7.
Right.
It's very weird, and to know that like this was someone who was already a kid dealing with certain issues. Yeah. And just to lose a parent in such a weirdly public way at such a young age. It was just something we really would say, there's a story here and there's a way we can tell the story of what's really going on in his head and in the head of everyone in this kind of situation without making it just a documentary about a guy who got on SNL.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's also important, too, because you have him deal with the loss, and it is still, in a way, in the film, a bit of a public loss because so many firefighters had heard about his father in the film. So, in a way, you kind of still touch on the fact that it is a bit of a known or public loss because of that area that he grows up in, that situation. So you're able to walk that line still and have that element of the film without necessarily attaching it to the overall tragedy. I thought that was really effectively done.
Because it was more about the firemen and their sacrifice than it was about this gigantic historical moment. We want to be a much smaller story than that.
Pete's incredible in the film, Dave. Like, he's incredibly natural. You watch young actors and you watch especially young comedians and, are they defaulting to their tricks? Are they doing their little things? But Pete is so honest and raw and natural in this film that he's just magnetic to watch. And you almost go, did he even do you even worry about an acting class with a guy like this? Because he's so natural to it, and you juxtapose that. Like, what was his process like? Did he ever rely on you? Were there moments where he was just sitting on the set going like, I can't figure this out. Let's figure this out together. Like, what was your role on the set with writing and also being there as Pete's friend?
I think as an actor, Pete is what you call unconscious.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like what they would say about athletes when, that he's able to kind of just be there.
Yeah.
But
in the moment.
He's playing, a character is basically himself. So he's very good at being in the moment, very good at being real. A lot of the dialogue you see in the movie even were things that he made up on the spot, which, as a writer, it makes sense because that's a lot of the way Judd writes, which is to give people room to put things in their own words and to make it in their own energy. So there was a lot of, he found so many things to do because he's so focused and he's so in the moment that it really benefits working with him. But it's also exciting, to see in the future him playing characters that are very different from himself, like like you'll see in Suicide Squad.
Right.
You know, I was very, very proud of Pete as an actor. I thought he was great. You know, but he's also playing himself.
Yeah,
you know, I'm not saying he should be on Downton Abbey yet, but in terms of playing a guy with his accent, it was we were really happy to see just how effortless it seemed to be for him, and especially because this movie we got really lucky with actors. I think you'll agree that Bill Burr was kind of shocking.
Well, that was my next. That was my next question. Yeah,
because you expect Marisa Tomei to be a great actress, and she was.
Right.
You know, that's also amazing just to watch someone so comfortable as an actor and so good at what they do and able to bring so many little things to the role. But then to see Bill Burr in his first major role, really taking it seriously and really falling into this role in such a tonally perfect way was really, really great to see. Because he takes it so seriously.
And you can tell. And, when I was reading the production notes that, he remembered meeting Pete Davidson way back when Pete Davidson was first getting into comedy. And he said, I don't know why I remembered. I just did remember him. He was this gangly kid. His mom was doing all the talking for him. And then years later to have him come on to the film to essentially play a man who is going to, be with his version of his mom on screen, which was the Marisa Tomei character. It's funny how the world works sometimes, but you're absolutely right. He is so natural as well. Bill Burr is in this role, and he's grown. He's grown into these roles. I remember him in The Heat with the Melissa McCarthy. It was very funny. That was Sandra Bullock. Very funny in that. I've seen obviously in Mandalorian, but this is something else that I haven't seen from him before. So you're right to say that this is like his first really like leading starring role, and from the reviews I've read, he's the one him and Peter, the two people they're talking about the most in these reviews, being just incredibly natural with their roles. What was it like for you to watch him kind of dive into this and really settle into this role as the days went on the set?
I mean, it was really great just because we knew that there was a certain chemistry that was very necessary that they had, and you can't exactly plan that out. But what was amazing to me was watching just how lived in this character Bill was able to be for a character who looks simply ridiculous. I mean,
the mustache, man, it's everything.
We wanted to have that mustache, and he grew a mustache that was much more profound than I expected to be possible in the amount of time he had. And I was like, wow, you look like a bartender on Sesame Street. You look like, he looked so, because I said to him, I was like, do people even recognize you at clubs? Like when you walk into the cellar, do they just try to seat you at a table now? Like, does anyone even know who you are?
Yeah, do they grab their kids away from you? Because
I was like, you're unrecognizable. It was and for that character, for you to just forget about the mustache look for a minute, that's how good an actor he was. That's how good the character was. That he really, he completely got it.
Yeah. Well, and he's one of these guys that's come into his own right over the last few years, and you enjoy watching when a comedian kind of branches out into acting and how they bring a lot of their own emotion and roles and experience, own emotion and experience into these roles. And you can tell, as you said with Bill, it's a lived-in role because he's really kind of imbuing it with this his own life work, his own life travails, all of that inside of this character. And in the end, though, which I love about it, and again, no spoilers here, but they're not that different from each other, they find out, and that's fascinating to discover as well, because as men, we always have a state of arrested development. All of us have a state of arrested development somewhere along the way, and we're kind of still working out whatever that is as we move on and try to do this adulting thing. There's still some form of arrested development in all of us that we're figuring out.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. And, that's just a big part of telling a realistic story is, knowing what people's flaws are and knowing, how to expose them. And, I learned a lot from Judd because, I'm a joke writer. I've written, stories before, but like I said, my favorite movie is Anchorman. I consider movies a delivery system for jokes. So this was about really showing the respect and getting really, really into it. And really trying to make a realistic story Judd had me read a lot of David Milch's writing. He was the guy who did Deadwood.
Yeah, and NYPD Blue. Yeah.
Yeah, and there was a lot of that. I never actually watched NYPD Blue, but I did watch Deadwood, and I read the transcripts of a lot of David Milch's like classes that he taught, like the lectures he gave, and there was something really interesting about like the way that he looks at the organic nature of a story. That it's just you're just creating characters, you're putting them in a scenario, and then you are serving them and trying to determine what is the realistic way that they would react in these situations, and about having this kind of respect for your characters, which is like a thing that, it's a newer way of looking at something that I think a lot of people feel when they watch movies, which is that anytime someone does something that you don't believe, it really ruins it. And anytime a character does something, not because the character should, but because the story needed this to happen, it really screws up, your ability to enjoy something. And I felt it was really important that we, I'm glad that I, got that kind of, perspective, because there's just certain things you have to be respectful of when making any story if you want anyone to be able to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. And, that's a big part of it. Just, you have to be true to who these characters are.
Right. And certainly in a film like this, right? Because this is not Anchorman. This is very much more grounded. Not that there wasn't an emotional journey for Anchorman for him to go through, but for Ron to go through. But like this is something different. This has got layers and levels to it. And it's funny you bring up Milch, because I'm an avid fan of Milch as well. The stories you hear on the set where he would be lying on the ground and coming up with scenes right before they're about to go on and shoot and handing the pages out. Some of those actors absolutely loved it because it was electric and you didn't know what was going to happen. Some other actors who are used to a little more regimented approach to storytelling and acting were frustrated by it. But either way, you can't deny the man's genius. And because if you go back and watch those early NYPD Blue, that's my first or one of my favorite shows ever. And Deadwood is in there as well because of his incredible work. And layering out these characters. And that actually was my next question. What did you learn the most about how did working with Judd Apatow deepen your approach to comedy or deepen your approach to screenwriting, besides what you already just mentioned here?
I mean, there's a lot. I mean, one thing, it's about the discipline, something that I think we were kind of already on the same page of, but something that it was good to see him do, the discipline of never being really satisfied with a script, and knowing that even on the last day of shooting, you're still looking for new ways of telling a story. You're still trying to find options. You're thinking about it so much because the idea is that eventually you'll think of something better than what you have. And that you keep doing that in generations. I thought that was something I really learned. Judd's patience, just as a director and a producer, just seeing his ability to just deal with anything that happens and know exactly how to fix it was really something. I mean, this is a guy who, he's been doing this for so long, and he started so young that it's like there's just nothing's really going to rattle him. And it's such an honor to, like, for your first movie to get to be on this level. And to get to be with someone who knows so much about what they're doing. And just about the process of just doing this, of how you work everything at once. Because, I would love to be a director, to have the kind of power to be that in control of how scenes turn out. But I don't know if I could really balance everything else that comes with it.
Right. So, well, I mean, that comes with time, doesn't it? You just kind of put your ass out there and see what happens, and see what you experience and what you learn as you go along, right? I mean, I imagine you strike me as a guy who understands this thing at a deeper level, and I feel like you've already, just from having this half an hour conversation with you, I can sense that you've got the ability to do this. It's more a matter of how much you want to actually do this, right? I mean, wouldn't you say?
Well, to be honest, the way I think of it is, if I really want to just be a writer, but have more control, but have my own story, and see how I would do things alone and get to be that kind of director, there's a place for that. It's called TV.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does have that kind of power. It's just a lot more work. So it's an interesting thing, because, I'm still, even though I'm, very old, I'm still pretty new to this kind of industry, to this level of the industry.
Right, right.
But I mean, I do really want to, as much as I plan on working with Judd again. I know we want to. We were talking about stuff, but it's hard not to want to be able to see what you can do on your own what I'm capable of. Even though I'm very proud of my chunk of this movie, you have to. I want to make my movie or my show.
Right.
I want to see what I'm capable of when I'm the last straw.
Yeah, you want to do your Anchorman. I totally respect that.
I mean, that's literally it. Yeah, I just want to do another Anchorman. Really
Somehow, some way. With working with Pete and your approach to all of this, has been interesting to hear all your thoughts and things that have come up for you throughout this process. What are some of the struggles you had in this process? As maybe some people who are watching us who are up and coming writers or comedy writers themselves, what are some of the struggles you had working on a film like this for yourself?
Well, I mean, waking up at a specific time is not easy. I had to wake up at a time every day, which I know sounds like hell for most people. But the thing is, I'm used to being up all night because when you do stand-up, you have to not be falling asleep at midnight. Mm-hmm. So, and then, the way a studio movie works is on Monday, you're there at 6 a.m.
Right.
Because you don't know when you're going to be done that day. And whenever you are done that day, you need to give like 12 hours for people to go home and sleep and come back.
Right.
So it's like if 6 a.m. goes to 8 p.m., well, then you can't really start work until 8 a.m. the next day.
Right.
So and then by Friday, you might be getting to work at 5 p.m.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until 6 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
So that you can imagine how weird that is as a schedule for someone who, just isn't used to doing that. I know that how incredibly lazy that sounds, but it is a lot.
No.
I live in South Brooklyn, so I was the only one who got to drive myself to work. Pretty much no one else. Pretty much everyone else had to get in vans that would pick you up. So while I had to pay a toll every day, which is let's not discount that, it is the highest toll in America. To go from Brooklyn to Staten Island, the highest toll in America. It was still worth it for the extra hour. Right. To get a little bit of sleep. Yeah. The real answer, I mean, in terms of what's difficult on a set, I mean, there's just so much. There's so much going on, and it's difficult to just get used to. I mean, I remember the first week I found production was able to get my hands on a Facebook. Yeah. Like a book of everyone on the casts and staff's faces and names. And I just, because I have a little bit of a problem with that. It's very difficult for me to remember faces. Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, no, I've had that since I was a kid. It's very, very difficult for me to remember faces. So I really studied the book to try to get to the point where I would know everyone's name, because they all knew my name because I was the writer, and I felt really bad about that. I've never had, that's kind of a thing I've never really had before, where someone knows my name and I don't know theirs. And I was that was really weird. And I'm like, okay, I need to figure that. And I was really studying it for a while, because I have a giant problem with that. It's very, very hard for me to meet someone once and remember their face. Right. So I won't hold you to it. That's fine. But that's just a thing with me. Yeah. Totally get it. Honestly, it's screwed up my life many times before. Occasionally it's made it better. Okay, yeah, because then you're like, oh yeah, I don't have to remember that. No, because there have been times in my life where I started talking to someone because I thought they were someone I knew. Because I really can't, there's context clues I would use. I thought, oh, that's the person I met the other day. And then I found out something, which is that when I meet a girl because I thought we already knew each other, apparently the way I speak to that girl works a lot better than when I'm trying to meet someone. I never made as good a first impression in my life as when I confused this one girl for a friend of mine. And it was it was a mind-blowing thing that suddenly this girl wanted my, I was like, this is, and then I realized what happened. I was like, wait, Jesus Christ, it worked. Yeah, that's how it is. You mentioned girls. Let's talk about the female actresses in this movie as well, man. I mean, you've got Belle Powley, who is fantastic as Kelsey. She's a British actress. I've seen in a couple of things before. You've got, of course, Marisa Tomei. You've got Judd Apatow, even Lynn Coplitz, who I've become a massive fan of later in her career and going back and seeing her stuff. This is full of very strong women.
Were you writing was it a difficult thing for you to kind of start writing for women as well, or did you kind of hand that off to Judd or Pete? Like, what was your approach to that?
I mean, I'm
not aware of that nowadays, Dave. That's why I ask.
In terms of writing for women, no.
Yeah.
I personally never. I mean, that never really factored in for me. That the idea that it was, that there's something different about writing for. I never thought of it as like, women writing for women is one way, writing for men is another. You just try to think of it as like who these people are, especially because a lot of these are based on people, so you can kind of ground it that way.
Gotcha.
Especially Marisa Tomei, because it's Pete's mom, Amy, and I'm just trying to and who picked up so many little things about the character, which was really, like I said, Marisa. It was amazing what she's able to do. I mean, Belle, I can say, like, I was, in the audition for Belle, I was so amazed at how good she was. Yeah. Especially, I mean, we had all these people coming in. Most of them were Americans doing a Staten Island accent, and she did it, and hers was better than anyone's. I mean, it was the way she did the voice for a British woman to do that accent so perfectly and not overdo it.
Yeah.
And do it to such a realistic level was, I mean, every day watching Belle was shocking. I always said, like, if anyone's going to win an award from this, it would, I would say Belle only because, like, Marissa's won her awards.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's the only reason I would say I might give it to Belle, just because she just, you can't stop focusing on her in any scene she's in.
Yeah.
There's a line that got cut that I laughed. It's something she improvised.
Mm-hmm.
I laughed so hard when she did this. It was just something she improvised, and just the way she said it that doesn't make it into the movie, where she's on a date and a guy says, I like superhero movies. And she goes, oh, I love superhero movies. I just saw one. It's called The Mask of Zorro. I couldn't believe how funny it was hearing her say Zorro.
The thing is, these characters throughout the movie, you want to default them into a category as you're watching it, right? And the movie doesn't let you. You want to discount them as like burners or people who would, because I'm looking at it from an older. I'm at that place of the Bill Burr thing. So I appreciated Pete Davidson's character's journey, but I was sensing a connection more with Bill Burr's approach to it. Like, do something, get off your butt, do something, and you're watching these characters, you think they can veer into of like this place of like, oh, they're just kind of dumb, or they're not, but actually they're all entrepreneurial in their approach to their world, whether it's legal or not is a matter for the law to figure out. But like overall, they're trying to make something of their lives. They're trying to figure out what to do. And Belle's journey with her character is the most endearing. She's just
no one's perfect.
Determined.
No one's perfect, but
exactly.
I guess her character is probably closest to it. Of being like self-actualized and someone. The thing about Belle's character, I guess now that I think about it, that's different from almost everyone else in the movie, is that she is not in her own way.
Yeah,
she's not.
From the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah, she's focused. And I think a big part of that is, as someone close to Scott, to Pete's character, you can't help but think like, how does he look at someone who he has to look at her and say like, he's almost in awe of her ability to be so comfortable. Yeah.
It's not something he understands. He knows you can sense it. Again, no spoilers. You can sense that he gravitates to it, but he's not sure why. And that's the journey as the movie goes on. I do want to say, you mentioned Marisa Tomei a couple of times. That scene with her and Bill, when they have their coffee, is one of the best scenes in the movie, man. One of the most authentic feeling scenes, and you sense the pain from both of these characters hiding underneath or bubbling underneath the surface of each exchange they have in that coffee scene. I mean, how delicate was a scene like that to write for you guys?
The crazy thing about it, remembering that scene, what really sticks out for me is remembering how much she can just turn it on.
Yeah.
Like, there's such a chemistry in that scene, and she just sits down and she's in it. Like, there is no transition. She is so in the moment, so ready. A scene like that, the thing you have to understand is that, like, there's 50 versions of it. We've written that scene over and over again. There was the dick joke version. there is the super serious version. And then there's the version where we just kind of found things, and that's part of the process with Judd is just you rewrite everything, you try all these different ways, and then you don't make the actors do that many different ways. You just do 3 or 4 takes just to kind of try it a different way because you want to keep that energy, you want to keep that kind of, you don't want to, weigh it down. Whereas with me, when I've directed small things, I make people go 20 times. They're doing it over and over again until I get the moment that I've been waiting for.
You're the chaplain. You're the chaplain doing 176 takes for the one scene.
I am horrible with that. I will make you say the same words till they mean nothing to you. Until
do you
I
do
get
line
the
readings?
exact timing that I want.
Do you do line readings? Don't do line readings. Do you do line readings? Do you give actors line readings?
Oh, I absolutely have. But that was when it was like a mockumentary type thing.
Oh, okay.
It was like direct to camera. It's like, there's certain things. I'm not telling them how to say everything, but there are certain lines that are just written a certain way.
Yeah.
There are certain lines. Sometimes there's just jokes that if you don't say it the way that it's intended, it's not going to work. So, I mean, you have to like, do what's necessary to get the line you need sometimes.
Of course. I hate to break it to you.
A lot of that, but
I hate to break to you, but you're already a director, Dave. That's director talk. You got to say it perfectly at this point in this line right now. Say it this way so I can move on to the next scene. That's director talk.
I'm much more of that kind of writer than Judd is. Judd likes to give people out of leeway. He likes to Judd wants to make the dialogue more like a framework that so that you're very real and that it allows people because by the time you're on set and the cameras are on, this scene so much that you don't have to say the exact words because it's about what you're getting across. Whereas I'm a guy who has a tendency to write a lot of things that are meticulously specific in their wording.
Right. Well, you're younger. Maybe as you get older, Dave, you'll expand that and you'll be able to do exactly what Apatow's doing. I don't know. We'll see as that goes along. I do want to talk about some other things. We've got less than 20 minutes left with you. It's going by so fast. I want to ask about a couple of things. You're a master roaster. What does it take to be one of these people that stands out as a master roaster of people? I've got a roast coming up for my birthday this year, and I've spent about 8 months galvanizing myself for the abuse I'm going to endure from my friends and family. Tell me, what does it take to be a master roaster, in your opinion?
I think it just takes the ability to not get bored with yourself and the ability to just write for hours. Yeah, that's the thing about roast is that I don't think I'm that good at it. I just think I spend more time. And if you can concentrate, if you can force yourself to concentrate on something that much, you kind of eventually get there. Because roasting has been a big part of what got me into writing professionally, and it's something that's a big part of it's such a big part of my stage comedy. So many things I've done in the last few years. I've been more interested in doing roast battles than stand up, really. Even though it's so much more work. Even though I like stand up too, but it's just I feel like I'm a pretty good stand up. I don't, but I'm not exactly I'm not this charismatic guy who can, just use looks or whatever to run an audience. I have to kind of outright myself, and roast battle is a little bit more about writing. So, I'm definitely, I think, a better roaster overall compared to everyone else than I am as a stand-up.
Right.
So that's kind of, but I mean, I think it's just about discipline. It's about just kind of having a knack for it and being able to say, because I know a lot of people roast battle, and the way they do is they think about their opponent and they write the number of jokes they need, and then they stop. And to me, I'm like, what do you mean you stop? You should be writing nonstop until you do the battle, and then keep the best ones.
Wow.
I remember thinking of seeing people's lists. I'm like, wait, you had to do 13 jokes, so you wrote 13 jokes? What, are you out of your mind?
Wow.
I don't, if I write 13 jokes, at most one of those is going to make it into the final. The first, I write, good roast battlers write 100 jokes.
Wow. I thought that stuff was improv on the fly. So they write ahead of time before these things happen, is what you're saying. I
have never, ever seen a roast battle where someone improvised and did well.
Wow.
Okay. Ever.
Fair point.
And I mean, some of the best comedians ever have tried.
Yeah.
It is beyond the abilities of man.
Yeah. Because those rap battles, most of those rap battles are on the spur of the moment, in the moment as it's happening. from what I've seen before. But you're right. I mean, there have been.
No, they're not.
No, not you don't think
Rappers
so?
are the biggest liars on earth when it comes to improvisation.
That's going to be the headline
Rappers
of this. Rappers are the biggest liars on earth.
Constantly find ways of making pre-written stuff. I mean, the words freestyle are supposed to mean literal freestyle, and most rappers simply call that any rhyme I haven't done on tape.
Oh, okay.
I mean, trust me.
Good peek behind the curtain. All right.
They are very rarely actually improvising.
You, how did you come to comedy? I mean, you came at it. I saw a couple interviews with you. You said you came to it really early in life. What was it that, do you remember the moment when you understood what, because everyone's got that moment from what I've read before with other comedians, like they got that moment where they realized, oh, I can get laughs doing this, or, oh, this feels so natural. Like what was there a moment for you? Or did it kind of just progressively happen for you?
About when I was 16, I definitely had a desire to do comedy. I loved comedy, mostly because people don't tend to do comedy for good reasons. I didn't have friends and I didn't really have, approval from anyone. So it was really important. And that's why people often do comedy. You're mainlining happiness. You're mainlining approval. You're forcing people to like you when you can make them laugh. And when you're as desperate to have friends and to be validated as I was, you focus on that. And I started just about 16, started just writing jokes. And then I actually remember my little brother and his friend found this paper that I had printed out of jokes, and they were really impressed by it. And they're not people who would say things that were nice to me for any reason. So it's not like they were trying to be nice.
Right.
When I was 17, I did a talent show at a hotel, and I won. And I was just so surprised that people actually were laughing at my ideas. Right. And because I was testing a theory that I actually am funny. It's just everyone I know doesn't respect me. But if I can do this in front of strangers, they might prove that this actually is good. And it was. Yeah. It's just every single person I know who didn't like me.
That's like the reverse of what you do when you're starting out in stand-up, right? You have those bringer shows, and now you're like, I'm going to bring strangers, not friends or family, to these shows. I'll be more successful that way.
Yeah, and I remember in high school, being brought on stage, and there were people from my high school who had no idea that I was there. Yeah, and the kind of shock they had to see, who I was outside of school was really interesting. Yeah, it was nice. I remember they laughed when they heard. I remember that they said my name, and I heard people laughing because they thought, "Oh, a comic has the same name as that guy we hate."
Yikes, man! Yikes. Well, another thing you're into is sneakers, man. How did this come about for you? I read a couple of things that said you're really, that's how you met Pete. You guys were you guys were just into sneakers. How did this come about? Have you always had a thing for it?
Here's the thing about that. We met doing a show, and then when Pete was going to LA, I was one of the only people he had ever known that was in LA, and we have a close mutual friend, so we started hanging out. And I suggested, there's cool sneaker stores on Melrose. I lived in West Hollywood.
Right.
However, Pete and I do not share the same taste in sneakers at all.
Oh, okay.
He wears expensive Nikes. I have refused to wear Nikes since I was 12. What I like to wear mostly are discontinued shoes from decades ago. I try to find specifically Fila triple straps and Puma Roma pigskins.
Okay.
I have a very specific taste in shoes. I love buying sneakers, but I don't buy the ones that anyone respects. I have a very, very narrow idea of what I think a good shoe is.
Okay. All right. Well, then I won't pull up the Nikes that I got. I just bought.
Sorry.
No, it's all right. I was going to get your opinions on these.
I am not the buyer.
Are these terrible?
Of the kind that everyone loves.
These LeBron 17s, are they terrible? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm sure those are amazing to everyone who likes those shoes. I have a very narrow scope of what I like.
Fair enough.
and I've said that in a store of expensive Nikes, and then had to explain myself when I said the word, I don't wear Nikes. To someone whose entire livelihood are people who will spend way too much on them.
Sir, get out. I co-host a podcast with my friend Matt Nost, who's a stand-up comedian as well. He is massively into shoes. It's called The Top 10, and he loves those Kobe 8s. Those are the ones they were discontinued. He's like, he found that they're bringing them back, and so he's already pre-ordering like 5 pairs of them, so he never runs out of them for the next few years. Do you know those Kobe 8s?
Yeah, I do know those actually. Yeah.
Okay, you're aware of those.
Yeah, no, I get it. I mean, I'm always amazed with people, but it's like it's like a collector's item. But like, I definitely, I don't like that many shoes, but when I do, it's very important to me.
Right.
But, the Kobe 8s were crazy looking. I remember those.
Yeah, right. The ESPN did a whole breakdown of all those for the last, I don't know, they ranked the top 50 shoes and the top 10 worst shoes. It was fun to kind of explore, because I'm not a sneakerhead at all, but I get it why people are into it. I'm fascinated to talk to people who are into that kind of stuff, because I marvel at their kind of approach to it and the nuance with which one strap or one strand or one color line will completely ruin the sneaker for them or elevate the sneaker for them.
Yeah, whereas I'm pretty much only a guy wearing like Vans and Pumas.
There you go.
And like they're expensive, but only because I have to find the ones that someone forgot they owned.
Yeah.
For like 30 years to get the ones I really want.
Right on. What are you looking to do next now, Dave? I mean, you've got the film's coming out now. It's going to be out on VOD. And what's your next mountain to climb or next thing to tackle that you're looking at? Are you still on SNL? Are you coming back to SNL or have you moved on from that to kind of explore your other stuff?
Well, in terms of SNL, the way it works for me is that I was only a staff writer there for one season. But but I never stopped co-writing Pete's update features with him.
Gotcha.
So if Pete remains at the show, I will continue writing those with him. Okay. Basically, that's the extent of how that works.
Right.
I don't really know exactly what I'm going to do next. There's several things we're kind of working on. Mm-hmm. So I don't really know. I do want to get into my own stuff because usually I'm more of a hired gun when it comes to writing, especially like TV stuff. I like it. I like adapting to formats and stuff. But there's things that I would like to do that are more specifically mine, and but we'll see.
Okay,
it's we've pitched so many different things, especially because everyone wants people to write while they're in quarantine, but then no one wants to buy things. So there's a lot. It's a weird time.
Right? Because you can't put it in motion. And so they're just like, I just want to read what you got. And then at some point, maybe down the road, I'll put it in production. But for right now, everything is kind of at a standstill. What's been your approach to seeing what's going on in the world, man? As I said, when we started, you do that Brickstone. You did that Brickstone stuff for a while for the Westboro chat. I mean, you were so, how can I say this? Your humor was very much in the face of these people. And some of them have even like converted out of that church and reached out to you when they've done that. Has that been kind of a special thing for you to see that? Yeah, this started out as like, let me go and make fun of these people, but then you've actually found the humanity of some of these people when they've stepped out of it to kind of reach out to you.
No, yeah, the idea that there were people who used to be Westboro members who then wanted to speak to me was a shockingly cool thing for them to do.
Right.
It was really, really great that they got something positive out of me humiliating their family members. And it's funny how the ones that I've spoken to that seem to like me, they are specifically the members who I never met while they were members. There are other members who I met and then they left the church who still don't like me for some reason.
Right.
Which I found interesting. But to be contacted and, told that because it's such a painful, scary thing for them to leave the church. Right. So the idea that I made the scary members of their family look like jokes and that helped them get through it was a really touching thing.
Right. Did you ever encounter a physical altercation, like where somebody felt like you went too far and they threatened you physically, or did you ever feel in danger when you were doing this? Because
Westboro never does that.
Westboro
never gets physical. I wanted it so bad. I wanted nothing more than for them to throw a swing. It would have been the best thing that ever happened in my career. But they're extremely disciplined like that. One time somebody spit on somebody and he was immediately kicked out. Wow. So that was never an issue. But I've done more than just Westboro. I've done a lot of different hate groups. I've done a
Yeah.
lot of anti-gay protesters at gay pride parades.
Right.
And, they're not really an organization, so they're more willing to threaten you. But still, anytime you're at one of these things, they're terrified. They're surrounded by thousands of people who hate them. So they don't have the balls to, swing on me.
Right.
They
Right.
get killed.
Well, you see it nowadays. Well, the Black Lives Matter. You're seeing Black Lives Matter protesters. Is there a piece of you that maybe wants to go out there and shoot something with those people, or are you afraid that that's way too charged of a situation to jump into at this point?
Well, the factors of that were a few. One, it's just less funny. It's not people who are terrified of gay people is just, and with these crazy signs. There's a different kind of tone to that than talking about people getting killed by the police.
Right.
So I don't want to joke about it. That's one.
Okay.
Two, there's not that many anti-Black Lives Matter protesters with the balls to go out there and identify themselves as that. They're usually much more private about their hate. So it's not like I would have the opportunity to find where they're going to be in advance and then go make fun of them.
Right.
And finally, I would have done, if I was going to do this, I would have done it with the reopen protests anyway.
Oh,
It
yeah.
happened already, except that I can't.
Right.
Because I can't go outside.
Yeah. Exactly.
I'm very happy that the protests happened, but personally, I am the primary caretaker of an 85-year-old woman.
Oh.
And I am a hemophiliac with Lyme disease.
Holy shit, man. Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's a few reasons why it's just not an option for me. I'm the only reason that my grandmother is able to not leave the house since quarantine started.
Dude.
There's a lot of things I have to do for her around the house. I just can't legitimize taking a risk.
Hey, man.
That isn't, that if I have the choice. So,
Right.
if I'm not going to protest, I'm certainly not going to do videos.
Right. Makes sense. And look, much respect to you for doing that, dude. That's a lot of people are in that boat, take care of their, their elderly grandparents or elderly parents to make sure they don't contract this thing. So, and of course sounds like what you just mentioned here, you've got your own struggles with it as well. You don't want to catch it for your own
but to
reasons.
be honest, it's my grandmother. That's the reason I really can't go out.
Yeah.
And why even when I've had to go over to Pete's house, in any respect, I'm so distant. I have a taped on mask. Which I taped to my face.
Yeah.
That's really the only way the mask really works. Because he's also very immunocompromised.
Yeah.
He's also been told by his doctor how it doesn't matter when things reopen, he needs to stay inside. He needs to not expose himself because he's just much more vulnerable. And, if you're in that situation, you have, as long as COVID's around, you have to take it extremely seriously. It doesn't matter how many other people are saying they don't, they're willing to take a risk. If you have a specific issue, you're not doing anything until this is gone.
Yeah.
And I, respect people who, want to get back to work. Of course, we need to reopen and, we need to, safely get back to things, but not everyone is in the same boat.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's that kind of serious approach to the world. You see some of that in here in the King of Staten Island movie, man. I mean, they're dealing with depression, dealing with the suicidal impulses that are there, especially right at the beginning of the movie, where that takes him. I appreciate that this story was told by the three of you. It was in good hands to tell this story because we are more open now to have these conversations. I hope someday we get even more open to have these conversations. Plenty of you who watch me know in 2016, I almost took my own life. And so finding that connection with the character that Pete Davidson plays is really important to me when you watch it, the way it's presented and the way it's shown. I'm always aware of it in media when this is approached because it is more open to talk about now, but there needs to be more responsibility behind mentioning these storylines or mentioning these attributes to a character. And I really like the way you guys approached it and handled it in this movie.
No, thanks. And I really hope that if anything people get out of this, it's a little bit more perspective about, people that they don't have, that they may not understand personally.
Right.
Because I think, a lot of people have ideas about mental illness that are very simplistic about, why people feel certain ways and why people do certain things. Yeah. And that it's just not. And that, you can, and that, it's hard for some people to understand how a famous person can have these, the kinds of issues he's had. Yeah. And it's like, it's really, it's in him. It's not there. These things don't get fixed by outside stimuli.
Right.
And, I think the movie is supposed to be about, I think, really about loss and understand. It's about loss, and it's about being stuck. And, and that mental illness is a very big part of why a lot of people are stuck.
Yeah. Yeah. And in the end, no matter, like you said, no matter how much outside stimuli comes into your life, it's about you figuring it out as you go along on this journey, what it is that works for you to climb out of that, or at least create an existence where you can come to terms with it and function in a positive way for your life, which isn't always easy. And so seeing it in the movie, his journey, I think, I hope a number of young people see it and find a certain kind of strength or relatability to it that can put them at peace or put them at ease, at least.
And I think that's a big part of the movie. It's not easy.
Yeah.
It doesn't just happen.
No, it's very, very true. It doesn't. Well, thank you, Dave Sirus, for taking the time to sit down with me on the Deep Cut, man, for an hour to talk about this film that is out now, The King of Staten Island. It is out for you to enjoy. You can see it in the theater or on VOD. Trust me, you will absolutely enjoy this one, and you'll walk away with a deeper appreciation of Pete Davidson as an actor, Marisa Tomei, and definitely Bill Burr as well. And you might even walk away with a deeper appreciation of Dave Sirus as a writer, for God's sakes. Wouldn't that be incredible? Dave, what can you plug? What have you got coming up next? Or should we just hit your social media?
Yeah, you can go to social media, whatever. Donate to Campaign Zero if you're looking for advice on that. But just if you like the movie, good.
There you go. All right. Well, thank you to Dave Sirus, and thank you all so much for watching this episode of The Deep Cut. Let me end it like I end every episode. Whatever you need to do to get through the next second, next minute, next hour, next day, next week, next month, next year, please find your way to do that. You never know what's waiting for you on the other side. It just might surprise you. All right, we'll talk to you next time on The Deep Cut.